Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Enhanced Job Site Safety Through Digital Processes. We're happy that you've taken the time to join us today. My name is Emily Rhodes, and I'm the Director of Marketing at Liquid Frameworks. I will act as the moderator for the webinar today. So, like we do every time, we'll start with some housekeeping notes. We've muted the phone lines on our end to avoid any interruptions during the presentation. We will, however, allow time for a short question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Next, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Joining us today, we have Justin Gerard, Solutions Engineering Manager at Liquid Frameworks, and Matt White, Senior Solutions Engineer, also with Liquid Frameworks. Service providers in the energy industry face high-risk job sites, and we know that maintaining a safe environment is of the utmost importance. So today, we're going to explore how moving from paper-based processes in the field to digital ones can help enhance job site safety. So with that, I'll turn things over to Justin to get us started.
Thank you, Emily, for that introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining our webinar today to talk about enhanced job site safety through digital processes. Now, before we dive right into a demo of the process, I would be remiss if I didn't set the stage about who Liquid Frameworks is and who we serve. Liquid Frameworks has been around since 2001, primarily as a consultant in the oil field and industrial space around mobile field operations. We evolved into a software company in 2007 with our first enterprise SaaS solution. We fast forward to today and we have a suite of over 10 modules focused specifically on three main verticals. We've spent countless hours riding out to well sites, refineries, and conducting interviews with field technicians, and even talking to your customers to deliver an enhanced suite of modules that's capable of serving all facets of the oil field, industrial, and environmental services industries. Now, as you can see by a sample set of some of our customers, we don't sell to the typical Mr. Fix-Its and AC repairman. We focus solely on the oil field, industrial, and environmental industries. So whether you're drilling a new well or installing a beam pump, transporting produced water to a disposal facility, cleaning up after a spill, or performing inspections or repairs on heat exchangers inside of a refinery, or really any variation of those, FieldFX is right for you. Now, the FieldFX product suite is comprised of two base applications, FX e-ticketing, as well as Enterprise Asset Management, or EAM, to help you enhance physical asset management. There are a number of add-on modules for scheduling your job resources, tracking time, managing contract conditions with CPQ, customer self-service for an online portal that your customer can collaborate with you in, as well as invoicing for those complex invoicing scenarios that we know that your customers throw at you. A new module that we're excited to introduce to you today is FX Data Guide, which Matt will be demonstrating in just a little bit. FX Data Guide enables complex field form completion online or offline from the internet. With advanced logic built into the forms, you can provide a guided experience for the user, delivering the right forms in the right situations. And inherent across all the modules and included is the FX Analytics and FX Forms modules to allow you to report on those forms to help drive smarter strategic decision making. Now, in field service, ensuring both the customer and the employee's safety isn't easy. Field service workers are exposed to many hazards, rotating equipment, high pressure, dangerous chemicals and gases, and today, field service mobile workers now face the risk of COVID-19. As a result, first-time install and repair rates are even more important to field service worker safety because the more time spent out on a job, the more likelihood of an incident occurring. Preparation is key to ensure a perfect field service experience. In addition to making sure that your mobile workforce has all the necessary tools and resources in place to complete a job, they also must follow safety guidelines, whether that be from a governmental regulatory agency or the customer themselves. Because field technicians often work in remote locations, managing these hazardous working conditions can be quite challenging. To make matters worse, many employees are unaware of the extensive list of health and safety compliance requirements that apply to these operations. These requirements might include employee training, use of appropriate PPE, record keeping, enforcement and accountability, hazard analysis, health-related exposure testing, and the list goes on and on and on. But how is a company supposed to manage all of these safety requirements when they rarely, if ever, see their field service employees? Now, no software is a replacement for proper safety practices. And unfortunately, the manual nature of field service means that accidents and injuries will occasionally happen. But the right field service management tool with the right procedures can minimize the risk of harm for the customer and the employee. Companies that fail to manage these issues face potential fines, civil liabilities, reputational damage for the company, increased insurance premiums, and lost business altogether. Enhancing your current safety practice by supplementing a digital process like FieldFX gives your field service workforce peace of mind that their safety is number one. The high level of documentation provided by FieldFX protects both the contractor and the customer. By providing specific workflows, detailed documentation, and making it simple to share information, FieldFX Data Guide relieves some of this pain for customers and employees alike. So set your team up for safe and successful service delivery with best practices and field service management, no matter what the job, where they are, or what's happening in the world. And to show you how that works, let me hand it off to Matt White. Matt?
Thanks, Justin. So what I want to do before we just dive straight into a demo of FX Data Guide is I just wanted to highlight a couple of the key components that we took and brought into this new module. As Justin mentioned, things like guided workflow, making sure that as they input the data, the right question comes up at the right moment, so they're not looking at hundreds of different questions when only a few may be relevant. Other things that we've taken from the industry and working with customers and looking at how we can improve this process is things around higher character limits on fields where the questions are asked, or unlimited size forms and questions. So you're not restricted by having to narrow down a question and meet a character limit. If you've got 100 questions and you got to have long string questions to get that accuracy of making sure that they input the right data, you can do so. Even including things like descriptions for that question are now available. And as always, this data that we capture has to be reportable and actionable. So as we bring this data back into FieldFX back office, it allows us to take that data, run reports, analytics, even have workflows or actions that occur, like email alerts that may go out because there was an incident on location or the type of incident needs to go to a certain employee. That can all be done. As well as online and offline data capture. As Justin mentioned, our customers work around the world at many different locations, offshore, at a well site with no internet. So all this data capture has to occur at any given time. As well as taking an easy to use form designer. So you can see on the screen here, this is just a quick picture of it before we get into it later, it's a drag and drop toolbox on the left. And as you build out your form, what you see is what the end user is going to input with. So you can make sure that as you're filling this out, you know exactly how they're going to see this information. And it's allowed us to open the door to not only having multiple matrix across the columns, or maybe I want to have multiple questions left to right. So that way they're answering them all in one single row. So it makes it a little bit easier for that data and the end user to experience. And then version control. So we understand that what we had last year as a safety form may not be applicable this year, but we want to take what we already had, create a new version, and enrich it with more questions, specific questions around what safety questions we need to ask. All that can be tracked inside FieldFX. So once we deploy that new version, we're no longer worrying about, did everyone get that email with the latest copy, or did they come into the yard and they pick up the latest version? This will deploy it out to their device as they synchronize, having the latest and greatest version at their fingertips. And of course, device agnostic. Utilizing our new FieldFX Mobile Pro native application, whether I'm on an iOS device or an Android device or even a Windows device, utilize that native application for that experience seamlessly across all devices at any given time. And so with that, when we look at the use cases for Data Guide, we understand that FieldFX operates in a multitude of industries, whether we're the operator, owner of a refinery, environmental, upstream, downstream, even midstream. These use cases might be applicable to yours. You might have a different naming convention for something like a JSA or tailgate safety meeting, hot work permit. You may call it equipment evaluation or an equipment survey. So you can see the laundry list of items here that I was able to fit on a single slide. It's just a sample set, but it shows that across all these industries, there's a number of different forms that have to occur at different parts of the process, at different levels of data capture, whether it's a job level, it's a ticket level. And now with FX Data Guide, we may not even be linking to a job or a ticket. I might just be walking around doing a site survey for my customer, going to different sites, and I'm not really at a specific job, so I can do those types of forms now. And so it's really allowing us to open the door to make sure that wherever we need to capture this data, we can do so. And so with that, what we're going to do is we're going to take one of these, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with, an incident reporting form where we had a safety incident on location, and we're going to walk through what this would look like in Field FX. So with that, we're going to go into a quick little demo, so that way everyone will get to see this. And so I'm going to run this first one on my laptop. I'm going to use the new Field FX Mobile Pro native application. So you can see that I'm in my Harrison 34H-1 job. I've started my ticket for the day. I've geo-stamped my location. I've logged some mileage. I've checked some boxes of consumables or items that I've been using to drive my Field FX CPQ module to help me build my ticket and help me get the items on here accurately. I've also been filling out my ticket log. So what activity has been occurring? Do we have our safety meeting? What forms did we fill out? All those can be tracked here. And then of course, when we do have to fill out data, I go straight down to my data guide, create a new record. And for this example, I have my safety incident form, and it's going to open up my screen to ask me my questions here. And you can see I have, about 5 or 6 at the very top here, but as I make changes to this form, whether it's internal, customer side, maybe it's personnel, new questions show up. Now, because I said personnel, I now have to know, well, who is the employee? Well, let me go in here and start searching for that employee here, and I can start searching. So being able to link into all the data that you already have in Field FX is key, as well as being able to come in and quickly come through this and fill out the information. So what time is it right now? So I can come through here and say, well, it's 1:12 p.m., so I'm going to go ahead and log that and record that here. What injury did Justin occur? So I can start to just check off multiple check boxes here. What happened? I could be required to take a photo. Maybe I can define the severity level of it here. And of course, not only can I ask certain questions around the employee and what happened, but was equipment involved? And that could open up the door to now say, okay, well, what equipment was involved? What happened with that piece of equipment? Why was it being utilized in a certain way? And I can, again, still link in and open up more questions here just by simply saying yes or no to a box here. And I can then say, okay, we were backing up truck and ran over Justin's foot. So any other details, any other vendor information, who else was involved? This could open up the form to saying, well, was there anybody else involved? Yes. I could ask more people to fill out this information. I could close this out, submit it, I can complete it. And you can see once you're completing this, it's now going to synchronize this data back to the back office, but I'm right here at my ticket, so I can go back to my work very quickly and easily. And so the idea here is to capture that data, guide the user through a very simple form here in this example, and move them throughout that process. And so with that, that was a very easy form. So if we go back to our use cases, that was probably one of the more simple forms that everyone has seen here. Just making sure that we're recording those safety events as they occur. What was the severity level? Maybe we also want to track stop cards or near misses. That can all be done inside Data Guide. But for a little more complex form here, you can see I have a number of them that I could select from. But what we're going to focus on today is the confined space entry. And so this is one where traditionally we need to be able to have this form. We might be having people tag in, tag out, need to capture signatures throughout the day. So now we can take that and make sure that as this day is going on, we can go back to the same digital Data Guide form and just continue adding new entries throughout the day. And so with that, what I'm going to do is, instead of utilizing my laptop for this example, I want folks to be able to see my iPad that I have here that I'm running locally. So I'm just going to screen share so everyone gets to see this. And you can see that for this example, I'm still at my job level now. So we've moved up from ticket into the job, and I can start a Data Guide form at this level. And so instead of having to go all the way down to the ticket, we're going to start a new Data Guide. I can have multiple forms here, so you can have regulatory compliance forms like Justin mentioned. We can generate specific customer forms as needed, but we're going to start our confined space. And we can come in here, we can just start filling out my information. I can start tabbing through, so we can support that tab function and make it very easy for the end user to fill out that information that they need to be able to record here. We want to make sure that all that's captured. What location was it? So this is that Harrison 34H. But you can also pass data through from jobs and tickets. So I'm filling out this by just keying it in so you get to see what was going on. But you can also pre-populate information from a job, so they may not have to rekey some of this data if you don't want them to. And so we're going to say that I was the person. I'm going to fill in my number here. And then we're going to define method of contact. So you can see that as I scroll down on this form, it's allowing me to see the different ways of how we're capturing this data. So I'm able to make this very similar to how they're used to just going and checking that yes, no column, what's going on. They can come through and start checking these boxes off as I go down the left-hand side, and I can move through each of these screens very quickly. But it's allowing you to capture the data how they're most comfortable. So that way, how they're doing it today on a paper form or in an Excel document, we can regenerate here inside FieldFX, as well as being able to capture all the information that's going on. What was the person? What was the instrument? Who was the verification? So Justin was our verification here. He could sign right here on screen. He could add the date for it here. And then as well as the supervisor could come in here. Emily's our supervisor. She could sign. She could date as well. But what I want to highlight here is the ability that we can define the color ink that we want to sign with, how we want to format this information. So we can ensure when we do these specific forms, maybe we have to sign in a certain color for regulatory requirements, or we need to make sure it looks a certain way. We can capture all of that data. We can ensure the colors, the accuracy of all this information, as well as have pages in our form. So you can see that I have a single page here, but I can go to the next page. So making sure we can break this data up, how people are used to, where the top information might be the header, then we go to the second page, and now we're going to start recording our events here. So I can come in here and start recording. I can sign off on it. What was the levels here? I can then start adding a new level, come in and say what time was it. So now we're going to do it at 1:37. Every 30 minutes we should be doing these. Sign off on it, and then keep adding more and more rows as the day goes on. And so it's ensuring that I'm doing this in real time, but in the real world, I might leave this screen, come back, and I'd be right where I was. The form will remember where I am. I can come back into this form, as well as I need to add new log entries. So who's coming in, who's the attendant, what time did they come in, what time did they tag out here? So again, I can come in and put in their tag out time, but I can do multiple entries here. So it's really allowing me to make sure that I'm collecting the data that I want to. I can go back in and out at any given time, so I can return where I was previously. So all this information is captured at any given time. So if I were to simply go back to data guide here, I have all of my list of my forms that I've been collecting. If I need to go back into it at any given time, I can go in, see where I left off, make sure everything's collected, and go back to my next screen. And you can see all this information is still here. So now we have to do a new entry here. Justin's still the attendant, and now Emily is going in. So it's allowing us to really capture all this data as we want. And once we're done for the day, or we need to finish out our information here, we can close this, complete it, and it locks down our form for us. So ensuring that, yes, not only can we come back and forth to this form, make sure that all the data has been captured, but as well as making sure that as we're collecting this data, we can go back in and tag it complete once we're done. And as I mentioned, as you're filling this data out, it's synchronizing this information back and forth as quickly as it can, as long as we have an active internet connection. And then we want to also make sure that we show this in an independent form level. So this is very, very new to FX Data Guide and FieldFX is we want to allow data capture without being linked to a job or a ticket. So this might be in this scenario where we're tagging people in, or I'm at a check-in location that's not for a specific customer. I might be the owner operator of a refinery, so I'm just checking everybody in. And the favorite form that I'm sure we've all experienced up to this point and have filled out multiple times in the past year is a COVID-19 safety checklist. And so this might be one where I'm filling it out for myself. I might be filling it out for everyone that's coming in on a well site location, multiple people from different organizations. So what I want to highlight here is when we're at our home screen, you can see on the left side, we've introduced the data guide option in the lower left there. And so I can come in here and start a form without selecting any job or ticket. So now being independent of those requirements, and I can come in and start doing my check-in. And as I mentioned, this is a very blank form when you launch it, because it might be a guided form around, well, is this an individual? Yes, it is. I can come in, fill out my information, close it out, and move on for the day. But if I'm well site operator or I'm the owner operator, I could come in and I want to do a group check-in, and I want to be able to add a new. So I'm going to come in here and start filling out my information, and I can just, again, tab through, making sure this is very quick and easy. So who is Justin with? Justin's with Liquid Frameworks. I'm going to tag in here. Justin could sign in, and then you could say, no, I don't have any of these symptoms. I haven't been exposed. I haven't been traveling or anything. Perfect. Now we're going to log in to the next person. And again, I might be just filling this in as people come through the day. I'm going to come in as myself. I'm going to check in another person, making sure all this information is correct. I'm going to sign myself in and start filling this out. I haven't felt feverish. I'm a little bit high on my temperature, going through all this information. Yes, I traveled recently. And so going through all these details here. And by triggering this information, we could have alerts going out that someone was on location that had a slight fever. Maybe they traveled in the past 14 days. Maybe we want to have notifications going through letting them know that, hey, because you traveled, you are not able to enter this facility. Or we have to fill out more information of where did they travel from? Where were they coming from? Have they been under quarantine the last few days? All that information can be captured ultimately and captured here. And then once we're done for the day, we can complete this form. I could go back and start working on other things. And as someone else walks up to the gate, I could bring this form back up and log in more people as needed. So it's allowing me that ability, again, to continue collect this information. And all these details are now captured and synchronized back automatically when I have an active internet connection. Now, that's a few examples that I wanted to walk through, but what's seeing FX Data Guide without actually seeing the form designer ultimately? So the last item I wanted to leave with everyone with is, what does this look like when you actually want to design a form? So this design tool is inside the FieldFX admin tools. So if you go into the admin tools, you can access Data Guide once we install the package, and we can come in and we can start seeing different forms. Where are they connected? What version are we on? Do I want to include this in reporting? You can sequence them, so you can see all this information that we're capturing here. And I can go through and check through all of these. I can start seeing what version we're on, but I can come in here and select, well, this is a new one that we've been working on, and I can then modify this. So once they become active, they lock down, so that way you have to create a new version. But when you come into the editor here, you can start seeing all these details that you want. I can click on one of these. I can see the question I'm asking. Do I have a unique description I want? What's the formatting of the information that I need here? And as we mentioned, this is the guided workflow, the layout, the logic that we want to allow. So if this occurs, you need to answer this question, or it becomes required, or becomes hidden if you meet certain requirements, and a new field is now available ultimately. So all these details are right here in a drag and drop, easy to use designer tool, as well as the ability to test these. So as we mentioned, what you see is how the user is going to experience, but you can also experience it as them, and I can change, oh, we're going to use this on an iPad or an Android device or an MS Surface. I can come in and see these details here. I can start scrolling through and seeing how they're an experience, portrait, landscape, different ways of viewing it, what page number are we looking at ultimately. But all of this is right here in a single location for the designer. And then once we're done, we can save this form, deploy it out, and everyone would then get access to the latest and greatest form ultimately. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back to Justin and Emily for any question or answers that you may have about FX Data Guide.
All right. Thank you, Matt and Justin. It's a great demo. I have a couple questions here. So I'm going to start with this one. How long does it take to build a form?
So I can take that one, Emily. So as an example, the COVID form that I was showcasing today took me about 30 minutes to put together and deploy into mobile. And then I added a few extra little group sections there that took about an extra 10 minutes. So within under an hour, I can have a form from scratch deployed into FieldFX Mobile Pro.
Okay. So the question was asked, do I need e-ticketing to use Data Guide? Matt, you want to take that one?
No, so that's the idea. Without needing e-ticketing, we can make these independent forms now, not linked to a job or a ticket. That's where we're able to link them all the way up as independent forms.
Okay. Can I send the data collected to a safety dashboard?
That's a great question. So all this data that we're collecting can be chosen if they want to be reportable. So that way you can choose which forms I want to create reports around or be able to report on, as you may have hundreds of forms. You don't want all of them being reportable, so you can choose which ones are reportable or not. So yes, you could take all your safety forms, have a dashboard ready to go that is sent out to your safety group, every morning at 7 a.m.
Okay. Also, somebody would like to know if they can trial Data Guide.
Yes. So if you're currently using FieldFX, we could work with you on putting this in your sandbox and have you up and running and being able to trial this. If anyone isn't, we could get you a new trial org and get you set up and testing Data Guide as you want with your forms.
Okay, this one's okay. Does the air monitoring section have built-in logic to add a chemical in the hazard field, which would add a column to the monitoring table, or does that need to be hard set for the columns?
So the panel where I was filling out the information around new monitoring or entry logs, those are what we call dynamic panels. So it allows us the ability to have some flexibility around what's displayed and not displayed, whether I want to allow new line entries or how many columns are shown or not shown specifically. So we could work with you on if certain characteristics are needing to be added, and that prompts you an additional question, below it or next to it, that can be added into the panel ultimately.
Can the data guide render forms into PDFs?
Yes, today we can convert these into a PDF as you see it is how it will render. And in the future, one of the roadmap items is to actually allow a designer template editor so you can customize them a little bit farther into exactly what you would like them to see ultimately.
Can alerts or reminders be put in to alert the user of the next required monitoring or other trigger for needed documentation?
So I might have more questions with that one. So if someone asks that question, I would love to meet with you around it. I imagine it's an alert that says every 30 minutes I need to record more, but I don't want to say yes or no on that one without a little more detail.
Okay, so we will circle back with that person that asked the question just so we can chat with you about it. Those are all the questions I've received. So that concludes our presentation. Thanks to everyone who joined, and we will follow up with a recording of today's webinar, so you'll get that in your email shortly. And have a wonderful rest of your day and week. Thanks for joining.